December 1978, a Melbourne, Australia television news crew filmed an object they claimed was a UFO. That film gave chilling credibility to an earlier report of an Australian pilot who disappeared after he radioed that he was being strafed by a UFO.
Delta Sierra Juliet, affirmative. It's not an aircraft, it's...
Are there UFOs in the skies over Australia and New Zealand? In the last 30 years, there have been more than 110,000 recorded UFO sightings. Researchers estimate that that number reflects only a tenth of those actually seen. Eyewitnesses claim that in nearly all cases, the UFOs have a saucer-like shape. Despite repeated official government denials that UFOs exist, some people point to hard evidence of scorched areas on the Earth's surface where UFOs have supposedly landed.
The reports of these have been going on for so many years now, and if there's such an intelligent set of people about coming from outside the Earth that have been coming around all these times, I think by now they would have landed and introduced themselves.
Others weren't so sure. Quentin Fogarty, a reporter for an Australian television station, was in New Zealand at the time of Vern Powell's flight. His station requested him to do a story on Powell's experiences. Together with David Crockett, a New Zealand cameraman, Fogarty decided to retrace the flight path of Captain Powell. In Search Of has recreated what happened to Fogarty on that fateful flight. Fogarty planned to make the 400-mile round trip between Wellington and Christchurch in a massive Argosy aircraft, which was already scheduled for a freight run. Armed with cameras and sound equipment, the two men hoped to film proof of what Powell had reported. Fogarty realized that the chances of seeing what Powell saw 10 days earlier were remote, but he still had strange feelings about the flight.
There were stages there where I was very, very frightened. And when I thought, well, if I was to die, or if in fact I was to be removed from that aircraft in some shape or form, then it wasn't going to be a painful process. And I can't really explain why I felt that. It's just a feeling I had.
The flight was long. Captain Bill Startup warily scanned the night sky. Fogarty and cameraman Crockett waited in the hold.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Just checking the intercom.
It may be a long night.
Suddenly, Captain Startup spotted the object and called to Fogarty.
Quick, off to starboard.
The object seemed to be hovering around the aircraft.
Do you see it?
Unable to get good camera position, Fogarty and Crockett raced up to the cockpit. This is the film they shot.
And by the time David and myself got onto the flight deck, I could see two bright lights, and in retrospect it now appears that this object was quite low, and in fact was reflecting on the water. We just kept looking at this one bright object that looked like a very bright star outside our starboard window. So we turned towards the object, and at this time David was continuing to film, and at one stage he said to me, he got very excited and turned around to me and said, you know, it's got a brightly lit bottom and a sort of transparent sphere on top. And I was doing a tape commentary at the time, and I remember saying that sounded like a classic flying saucer shape. And I think it was the last person to see it, was that I looked out the right-hand side of the aircraft and peered right down. And this object just went below the aircraft and disappeared. Nobody connected with this case has been prepared to say that they are extraterrestrial, because I don't think you can ever say anything is extraterrestrial until you can actually physically hold on to it or meet with the inhabitants, or, you know, or the thing lands in Central Park and you beam it live television around the world, and then people would say it was hoaxed anyway. But there are a number of possibilities, and I think that probably the strongest of all the possibilities is that it is extraterrestrial.
The film is unlike any other recorded in history. The object darted about, changed color, shimmered with an eerie translucency. The object was incredibly bright, far brighter than any planet or star. The film, shot by Fogarty and Crockett, has since been analyzed by U.S. and Australian scientists. Their conclusions have been that it does show some metallic object, unearthly in its brightness. No one will hazard a guess as to what it was. New Zealand might bear a strange relationship to an event which occurred 3 months earlier. In Search Of examines that event next. October 21st, 1978. 20-year-old Frederick Valentic took off to fly 120 miles from Melbourne, Australia, across the Bass Strait to King Island. Valentic was scheduled to pick up some fish for a small market that employed him. Despite his youth, he was experienced enough to be a flight instructor, and Frederick Valentic had flown this route many times before.
Delta Sierra Juliet, pilot to ground. Is there any known aircraft in my vicinity below 5,000 feet?
Delta Sierra Juliet. Negative, no known traffic.
Delta Sierra Juliet. There seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000 feet.
Delta Sierra Juliet. What type of aircraft?
I cannot confirm, but it's 4 bright lights that appear to be landing lights. Unknown aircraft has just passed over me, about 1,000 feet.
Is large aircraft confirmed?
Delta Sierra Juliet, affirmative at the speed it's travelling. Are there any RAAF aircraft in the vicinity?
Negative. Confirm you can't identify aircraft.
Affirmative. Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. It's approaching from due east of me. It seems to be playing some sort of game, flying at a speed I can't estimate.
Stephen Roby, air traffic controller on duty then, explains the reported UFO's movement.
Times, and coming from various directions. And then he started orbiting, and the aircraft was orbiting above him. And on several occasions, he sort of stated that towards the end, it wasn't an aircraft. And he described it as having a sort of a green light on it, and also it appeared to be a sort of a silver metallic colour.
Delta Sierra Juliet. What is your altitude?
Delta Sierra Juliet, 4,500 feet.
Delta Sierra Juliet. Confirm you can't identify aircraft.
Affirmative. It's not an aircraft, it's...
Guido Valentic is Frederick's father.
Night. He's supposed to join us with friends when we went for some movie, family movie projection. And that night, he never turned up. He didn't ring up. Normally, he's always, when he go for a trip, when he return at the airport, he normally would have called us, you know, I'll be home after an hour or so. But that night, it was quite strange, you know. We didn't know anything about it. We got home about 11 o'clock and he wasn't home. My wife then started to worry about it. And so, you know, I said, oh, this is too late to start inquiry.
Can you describe it?
Delta Sierra Juliet. It's flying past. It has a long shape. Cannot identify more than that. Coming for me right now.
He described it as being of a long shape.